Let's just ignore whatever my hair is doing and whatever my lighting is doing. Today is not the day for effort. Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I'm going to be talking about what I read in September. So the first thing I read was actually a reread of Agamemnon, the Anne Carson translation, which I will throw a picture of here because I cannot be bothered getting my book out because it's in my pile of dissertation books. And it is absolutely teeming with tabs. There are so many sticky notes inside of it. So many. At this point, I feel like I'm just kind of repeating myself when I talk about great plays. So let's just say that Clytemnestra made a lot of good points, Agamemnon is a little bitch, and Cassandra, as always, deserved better. And even if you're not like interested in Greek plays or Anne Carson's translations of them, I would encourage you to read the sections where she translates Cassandra's speech, because that's what made her want to translate it in the first place, and it's just pure poetry. The original text has got to be absolutely beautiful. I don't read classical Greek, so I don't know. But Anne Carson's translation of it is just so perfect. I could talk about it for hours. Sadly, it's not what I'm doing my dissertation on, but it's nice that every time I get to read the play, I get to experience Cassandra. Next, I read a short story called Away with the Wolves by someone whose name I have not taken note of, so that will be provided on the screen for you, along with a cover. This is another one of the Hugo nominated short stories that I'm working my way through, and I gave it 4 stars. This is a story about a girl who uses the fact that she is a werewolf to help deal with her chronic pain. The main character and her best friend were super cute. I think that relationship was a good part of why I enjoyed the story. It was nice getting to see just the kind of love and trust that they shared. The only bad thing, I think, is that it was quite short. Like, even for a short story, I felt like there definitely could have been more. And the plot point with the other wolf that is mentioned was really quite anticlimactic. I kind of expected her to meet this wolf, and it turns out it's another werewolf, and then she would get some kind of reassurance that no matter what she chose, whether that was to be a wolf most of the time or to be human most of the time, it wouldn't make her any less of a person or any less of a wolf. She would still always be the person that she is inside. And I think that's kind of what the story was trying to say, but I think that there was a lot of other things that could have happened. There was a lot of other kind of interesting threads that she never pulled on. But I did enjoy it. It was really sweet, and it was nice to see disability in a fantasy setting that wasn't being judged or fixed. Well, you could argue that her becoming a werewolf to not feel the pain is fixing it. I don't think it is, because it's still hard for her. It's not an easy fix. She can't just go back to being a normal person. This is what she uses to cope, and it is still something that is abnormal for her time. So I did really enjoy that exploration. Next, I read Hecabe by Euripides, the Anne Carson translation, obviously, and I will pop it up here because, again, I am not pulling it out of that pile. This was also a reread and is also full of tabs. I have never agreed with a woman more than I have agreed with Hecabe, or Hecuba, same person. She had every right to act the way she did, and I'm on her side. Basically, in the aftermath of the Trojan War, Hecuba, who is the Queen of Troy, is captured by the Greeks and Agamemnon. Most of her children are dead or captured by the Greeks. Cassandra is one of them. One of her other daughters is also sacrificed on the grave of Achilles to appease his spirit. And then she finds out that one of her so-called allies killed her youngest son for money because the Greeks won. So she decides to enact her revenge. And she is correct to do so. Just the female empowerment of deciding to kill this man who was supposed to be an ally and killed your child. Actually, no, that's a lie. She doesn't kill him. She blinds him and kills his children. Which, you know, and I say children, I think they're older. But, like, she has nothing left. Nothing. And even Agamemnon looks at this decision that she's made and he's like, you know what? You kind of had a point there. So he kind of turns a blind eye to it, which is, you know, very fair. I don't like Agamemnon, but he did the right thing there. In the measurement of like who I agree with and who I don't, you start up here with Medea, who you kind of have to say should not have done what she did. Like, I understand why, I understand your anger, maybe don't kill your children. And then it goes Clytemnestra because she's kind of violent about it, and she definitely has a point. But also she killed Cassandra, and it's not Cassandra's fault. Cassandra didn't ask to be a concubine, so, you know. And then it's Hecuba. Yeah, she had every right to do what she did, especially in Greek times. Like, if you're all gonna go about killing people for no reason, this woman can take revenge for her son. Whew. This section's gonna be quite long, but I have a lot of opinions. The next book I read was The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. I gave this 4 stars. It's a short story collection. Some are quite long, some are only like 2 or 3 pages. We love a bit of variety. I like Shirley Jackson's writing. I think she's so good at creating atmosphere and making normal suburban life weird and uncomfortable. I read The Lottery for the first time when I was in high school. I think I was 15, and nothing is ever going to live up to that first reading of The Lottery. Nothing will ever haunt me like this. But I did enjoy Shirley Jackson's other stories. Some of the stories that I liked were Flower Garden, which is about this small town that is extremely racist and they don't like anyone who isn't like them. I think it was extremely well written and definitely stuck with me after I read it. I also liked the one where the guy is convinced to leave his own flat. It's so surreal, it's so weird. That one is called Like Mother Used to Make. And I also liked Pillar of Salt, where a woman goes to New York with her husband and realises it's not the paradise that she's made it out to be her whole life, essentially. Overall, it was a good book. Some of the stories, I wouldn't say they were bad because Shirley Jackson's writing is really good, but they just weren't as captivating as, you know, The Lottery and some of the others that I enjoyed. Next, I read Antigone by Sophocles. This is a Diane G. Rare translation. Honestly, you guys are going to be so sick of me talking about plays by the end of this year. I gave this 4 stars. I didn't read this for my dissertation. I read this for fun because I'm kind of obsessed with the story of Antigone, and I needed to reread the play so that I could finish the poem I was writing about her. And I did talk about an Antigone translation not long ago, so there's not a lot to say. Basically, Antigone defies her uncle, who is now the ruler of the land, and buries her brother against his proclamation. Basically, fuck Creon, because you're stopping this poor boy from going to the afterlife. Like, it's a whole thing in Greek myth. If people aren't properly buried and properly memorialised, they don't move on. Hence the killing of Hecuba's daughter on Achilles' grave to appease him. So essentially, fuck Creon and we stan Antigone. The girl is hardcore and I love her. Next, I read Women's Influence on Classical Civilization, which is edited by Fiona McCarty and Irene Marshall. This is another dissertation text. I'll pop it up here. I'm not going to go fight with that pile of books. It's an academic text, so I didn't give it a rating and I'm not going to talk a lot about it. I just wanted to mention it. It is a selection of essays about, funnily enough, women in classical civilization. It had a good mix between literature analysis and actual reflection on the historical context, with some data about women at the time, which is actually kind of hard to come across. There isn't a lot of sources about it, like primary sources, I mean, from the time. So a lot of it is just kind of inferring and assuming things, which isn't the best for studying the time period. I also liked that it wasn't just about Greece. It also talked about Rome and some other kind of civilizations of the time. I only kind of skimmed those because that's nothing to do with my dissertation, but it was still interesting. The next book I read was The City of Mirrors by Justin Cronin. This is the third book in the series, which means I've officially finished the series. Thank the Lord. I gave this 5 stars, and yeah, I think this is definitely now one of my favourite series of all time. It's probably going to go on the list. Now, this is definitely going to contain spoilers. I'm not even going to try not to give you spoilers, so if you don't want me to spoil the series and or this book, skip to when I am not holding this anymore. So, as I said, this is the last book in the series. It brings all of the strings together, all of the story arcs coming to an end. All of the characters are who they need to be to defeat Zero and for the human race to survive. I might do a whole video on the series because I'm kind of obsessed with it, and it would be nice to just kind of word vomit all of my feelings. I just knew that Peter wasn't gonna get the happy ending he deserved. But at the same time, I do think this ending made sense. Like, as much as it pained me and I was like, I just want everything to be perfect for all of these characters, it wouldn't work like that. And it kind of had to work the way it did for the human race to survive, essentially. I literally cried constantly for the last 200 pages. I just cried. Everything with the cruise ship taken off and the core 4 deciding to go to New York to confront Zero, it just made me so emotional. The characters like saying goodbye, knowing that this is probably the last time they're going to see each other, broke my heart, and I just cried. Literally, it's been so long since I've cried like this at a book. I was sobbing, like fully sobbing, and just trying to read. Oh, I'm emotional just thinking about it. Ooh. And I actually really liked the epilogue. I found the time skips in the series kind of weird, but at the same time, I did like them. They did make sense. I liked kind of skipping through things because when you think about it, it wouldn't take like 2 years. I know that a lot of dystopian novels will happen, or dystopian series will happen over like a small period of time. Which, yeah, I get why they do that. But to literally defeat an army of vampires probably would not take a couple of years. It probably would take a lifetime. And in this case, Peter's lifetime. So I liked that the epilogue kind of came full circle. We skipped forward again to see how it all truly ended. And it all ends with Amy. As it should. It begins with Amy, it ends with Amy. We are full circle finally. I liked seeing how the human race survived and what they became. I think it was probably longer than it needed to be. But I did like it because I like the Jackson family and I enjoyed that, and I got really emotional when Theo's like great grandson or whoever he is finally met Amy and asked her to tell him the story. I'm honestly just so emotional about it. Amy's been my favourite character since the beginning, so it was just nice to see her story finish and to see people caring about her even after all this time. It's what she deserves. Now I need to find a way to watch the TV show. I know it's only one season, but I just want to watch it. And I'm so mad they're not going to make the whole series into a TV show. It would be so good! This is just really good. I recommend it. I recommend. Next, I read a couple of short stories from my list of Hugo short stories again. First, I read The Blur in the Corner of Your Eye by Sarah Pinsker. I gave this 4 stars. I think it's probably somewhere between 3.5 and 4. Kind of depends on the mood that I'm in. It's about a writer who goes on a retreat so that she can write her latest novel, and she kind of finds herself in the middle of one of her own stories. I didn't expect the main twist, so that was cool. Again, the thing about short stories is that they're supposed to be short, but sometimes you feel like you might want more. And I would have liked to maybe have it more fleshed out, but I understand why it wasn't. And I did like the twist. I think the twist made the story, if that makes sense. Because without it, I was just kind of like, okay, this is weird. But I did enjoy it. It was a quick read. I wouldn't say it's the best I've read out of all the short stories I've been reading. But it was fun and it was worth it. The next one I read was As the Last I May Know by S.L. Huang. I think it's Huang. If I'm completely wrong, feel free to let me know. This won the short, I don't know what exactly it is, the name of the category, but it's short stories. And this won, and I completely understand why it won. I gave it 5 stars. This is a sci-fi alternate history type thing where the codes for nuclear weapons are kept physically inside of a child. So if the president decides that he wants to, well, I say he because it's a male character, but if the president decides that they want to set off nuclear bombs, they're not called nuclear weapons, they're called something else, but they're nuclear weapons. And if the president decides they want to set one off, they have to kill the child to get the codes. I mean, the plot is already next level, like, definitely not what you'd expect, because it focuses on the child, it focuses on the girl who's like, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something like that. But the world building and the characterization that is fit into this short story is phenomenal. I really liked the ending in that it didn't tie up nicely, it wasn't wrapped in a pretty bow, like, oh, here's a nice ending. There's the sense that the story will continue to go on and it may not be a happy ending. I also loved the little poem that's included in the story that influences the title of the short story. That I really liked that. I thought it was a perfect way to encapsulate how the girl feels, which is obviously why it's part of the title. Next, I read The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories by Angela Carter. I gave this 3 stars, which might be kind of controversial. I understand why it's studied in English classes. I think it's more common to be studied down in England, but I do understand why it's, you know, well known, why it's used as a good example of feminist literature, but I don't think that as a book it's that groundbreaking. I did like the way she interpreted the different myths. I thought that some of them were really interesting, but some of them I also had to force myself to read just so I could finish the book. I liked The Bloody Chamber short story itself, and also The Lady of the House of Love particularly. I'm sure I've read The Lady of the House of Love before, because I knew what was going to happen, so I'm sure I've already read it. But I still really enjoyed it. I think that was probably my favourite out of all of them. So yeah, I don't really have a lot to say. I felt like it was just kind of like, it was fine. It wasn't, nothing particularly jumped out apart from The Lady of the House of Love, which I really loved. And I thought The Bloody Chamber was really interesting as well. But I was a bit disappointed, to be honest. And the last book I read in September was Force of Nature by Jane Harper. I gave this 4 stars. I have literally only read 2 of this woman's books, and I think she's probably an auto-buy author of mine. I just love the way she writes, and I absolutely devour her stories. This is the sequel to The Dry. It's about Aaron Falk, who is a financial police officer. I think he's a detective, but I'm not entirely sure. And in this book, a contact who is part of his investigation, who is key to getting evidence that he and his partner need, goes missing on a company hiking retreat, and he and his partner go to help investigate. Aaron Falk is one of the only male detectives I have ever actually enjoyed reading. I would like more, please. I love how we find out all of the dirty details about their lives and the secrets that everybody hides, and how it helps build them as people, it helps with characterization, but it also keeps us bouncing between suspects, unsure of who we actually suspect. This bit's gonna have a little bit of a spoiler. I guessed what Daniel, I think it's Daniel, the head guy of the company, I guessed what he was saying to Alice on the first night. I was not surprised that he would make that kind of threat, but I didn't guess who the killer was, so I did like that. She was, I'm not going to say which of them it was, in case, you know, you want to read it. She was on my radar, but also, you know, I was still bouncing between all of them, so I liked how that was written. And I did get really sucked in towards the end. When the climax was coming up, I couldn't stop reading. I was supposed to be going to bed and I was like, nah, I'm just going to finish it. And now I need to buy her standalone so that I can just have read all of them, and hopefully she'll read some more. Read some more? Write some more. And those are all of the books that I read in September. Let me know if you've read any of them, if you plan to read any of them, what your thoughts are. You can talk to me down in the comments or in my social medias, which are all linked in the description down below. I'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, just interact with me here. I love making new book friends. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!